In lesson 3.2, we're going to talk about shapes and how we add them into the scene. The process is exactly the same as it is for empties. You right click and you can go to 3D objects, and you've got a whole load of objects in here and things that aren't even objects, like text and terrain and trees. Just to talk you through some of the other ways you can build this, you can also click on the plus sign up here and you get a way of creating 3D objects, exactly the same menu. You also get them up here in game objects as well. You've got create empties, 3D objects, create cubes, spheres, etc. When I do training videos, I'll teach you my approach and the method I use. You develop your own, but I will just be right clicking in here because that's what I do. So right click, 3D object, cube, and there's a cube. Simple as that. We might want to name it. There's lots of things you might do with it afterwards. Like you might, for instance, turn off the mesh because you might just want the collider object to be able to create a trigger zone if somebody walks into it. You might want to create a different mesh for it altogether. So we could click on the mesh object here. If I click on this little radio icon, it will load up all of the different 3D meshes that we have loaded into the project. Because we inserted quite a lot of content, we have the chair and we have all our 3D content that's come from our standard Unity assets pack. There's quite a lot of meshes in there, so there's a nice aircraft wheel. So I'll change that mesh to the wheel. There you go. Now our box is a wheel. It's still called a box or cube. You see it's still got the cube around the outside, which is its collider. That's why this isn't probably the right way to modify your scenes, but you can see these are how the components work. What else we got? Let's delete this as we go. We've got a sphere. Very nice. It's a cube. Sorry, it's a ball. There you go. We've got a capsule. Looks like a pill. Could be useful for something. We've got a cylinder. That is quite useful if you want to do poles, and particularly good for scaffolding or fly bars. And what's good about all these objects, they've already been built with all of the correct sort of, the colliders, which are useful. Like if you want something to interact, so you can't push something through something else, and for it to have some sort of physics, so it reacts to something when it hits, you want the colliders in the right place. So these objects are already pre-built to have that. They're built to be nice and efficient. So sometimes it's better, rather than importing, for instance, a plane from your 3D modeling program, use a plane in here and position it because it's built to be efficient already. They're kind of the same thing. So I can bring that up here, turn it around. I can see it's moving in the Z-axis in my inspector there, so just check it's definitely the right one. And then I want to just type in 90 degrees, just make sure it's nice and straight. There you go, now I've got a backcloth. Position it around a bit. I could change the scale, so the scale is 1 by 1 by 1, which means 1 by 1 meter. So I might decide to make it 8 by 6. So that's gone, it's gone quite wide. It's gone 8 in one direction. Now, of course, it won't do anything in the Y because it has no depth. Because we've now spun it around and it's got local settings applied. It's thinking that the Y is the green coming out of it, and a plane is a 2D object by its very nature. You can't scale it. So we can make that taller, also wider on the Z, and we go up on the X. It's 4 by 4, and it's on it's bigger. Worth noting that it's one-sided, so you look from behind, you don't see anything. So that's where you might use a cube rather than the plane. We might decide to use a cube. We make that 4 by 4. Ooh, very different in size. Let's go 30 by 30 by 30. Now I can't remember which ones. It's the Y-axis we want to change. So make the Y-axis 0.1. Oh no, wrong one. This is what I don't like, working in local mode. There we go. And now I've got a plane. That's double-sided. Okay, let's delete the plane out of the way. And you can see it's actually a box. It's got an edge, very, very slight edge there. But you can put different textures on either side, which is really, really helpful. So that's a cube. Now, just a couple of other objects in here worth knowing. Pretty much everything else you'd bring in a 3D model for. You wouldn't really use these unless you needed a cube, a sphere, a capsule, or cylinder. Quads, don't worry about those. Text, if you want to build text, this is kind of a bit of a 2D text tool. It's for doing your UI normally, and the reason you can't see it is because it's looking for a canvas to print the text on. And we'll cover that off later when we do UIs, which is in lesson 3.5. But you do have 3D text, which you can see. There's a difference between 2D and 3D. So you've got hello world. Text is a whole minefield. Out the box, it doesn't work. The resolution is just appalling at that scale. So what you have to do is you have to kind of change the font size at the same time as making the scale really small and making the box much bigger. So we'll play around about a bit later, but that's how you create 3D text basically, and you can change that around to make content. The places where you might use that is if you wanted to leave a label or something built into the scene, or you wanted to take something like an H and turn it into a piece of 3D geometry for your scene, like as an arch. I don't know if you ever really would, but it's a way of creating 3D geometry without having to model it from scratch. What else have we got? We have the tree. I don't think you'll ever need to use, to be honest, because if you need a tree, you just import one. The standard tree, I mean, it's pink because we're in URP mode, but this is based on what's called Speed Tree, which is a plugin that they bought a long time ago. And it's a bit of a challenge to learn, to be honest. You have to sort of grow your tree, and you literally create nodes, or like a branch, ironically, to try and create the sort of tree you want, to choose the materials it's going to have. There's all sorts of things to play with here to try and make your tree. I don't use it. I import a 3D model that I like the look of, but it's a more efficient tree if you are using it. And I think there's one other thing I wanted to show you. Terrain. Don't worry about wind. Don't worry about terrain. Sort of ragdolls. That's a whole other thing. But terrain might be useful if you're working on an actual game or a scene for an immersive experience where you want to have a lot of distance. It's not set inside a venue. Terrain is a bit different from a plane because it goes on for infinity. So I double click on it. It doesn't look that big, but we can paint it and make it bigger. So we can paint on it. Let's work. We can paint on height and terrain, like different hills and things. We can paint on trees. So you can sort of turn it into different things, and you can just keep clicking like this to make it the terrain bigger and bigger. So you can say this is how big it's going to be. But what's actually happening inside the game engine is that you've got something called LOD, level of detail. As you move into a new terrain area with your character, it turns on the next section of terrain. So it grows as you walk around. So in here, you can select how big you want it to be. And yeah, of course, in games, they'll make it huge. It'll be the size of a world. And it's using all the same data to procedurally generate trees and environments and things. So it might be useful, but I wouldn't spend too much time on it because it doesn't come up very often. It's something you can easily research on your own. So that's shapes. Next lesson, we're going to move on to lights.